Thank you. Mr. Ibrahim, you mentioned that the news coverage was very inadequate, even on Fox News. How would you better communicate to the American public? What would you suggest that we do to educate the American public as to the facts as that you've elaborated on as a scholar?
Well, I mean, to educate the public, of course, academia is one place to start, and that I just read a report about how school textbooks and high school books completely whitewash and the history that you'll read about Islam and how the euphemisms involved, how Islam expanded through trade. And not jihad. And yet you go to any Muslim school in the Arab world and they proudly teach their kids that we spread through the sword, through violence and through force. So that sort of disconnect where you have one group openly and proudly boasting of their militant background, and then you have another group who stands to suffer from this, teaching generations of Americans that no, this isn't true, and we're not, and not at all, in fact, just treating it as objective history. I mean, that's the whole point of education, is to relay facts as we can ascertain them. And so to whitewash it in such an absurd manner, the things that you read now, and it's not just, of course, at the elementary or high school level, it's in college. College, you go, and all of these, the sources, and this is what always amazes me, the sources, the textual, documented sources by authoritative Muslims that make all of these things that we're discussing 100% clear, that the Christian or the non-Muslim is a dhimmi who is to be suppressed, that, or the historical aspects of what has been happening up until the recent era, and they're all written by authoritative Muslims. All of this, you won't find this in a class being taught, because those classes are more focused on teaching how Muhammad liberated women and any sorts of other fantasies that somehow can make, in other words, what's happening now with academia is reality is being forced and conformed to fit into ideologies and what we'd like it to be, not vice versa, which is what should happen. And of course, the media again is, you know, you will recall, for instance, there was the business of the Christian pastor in Iran who's set to be executed for refusing to go back to Islam as an apostate. And, you know, you saw that, and I talked to a lot of people, and they were all amazed. So many people, they couldn't believe it. And to me, though, I can't believe that this example that they reported is one out of thousands that's going on right now in the Muslim world. In fact, I did a little study at the same time that the media had finally reported about this one pastor. There were about half a dozen others who were set to be executed around the Muslim world. There were all sorts of other things, not just forget about the sheer persecution that goes on, but just very similar things. There were blasphemy, people who were arrested for blasphemy and waiting to be executed. Churches were burned, this and that. None of those made it into the media. We got this one in, and that's good, and that opened to many people's eyes. And the question I got is, wow, I didn't know that. People really do that? And you see, to someone from, you know, from my background who's immersed in this and studies this, it just shows me what a great kind of disconnect there is between the Western public and the world view and reality and what's really happening on the ground. And, you know, this business, again, of trying to portray the Muslim Brotherhood as the good guys. This is absurd, as Cynthia said. These are the guys who begat Al-Qaeda. These are the guys who gave the world Sayyid Qutb, who actually articulated the entire vision of the modern day radical movement. And to say, and these are the guys who have learned and perfected the art of taqiyya, which is basically another mandate under Islamic law that teaches Muslims to deceive infidels by acting moderate and by renouncing violence and by doing all these things until, of course, you're strong enough, and then you implement the real and full Sharia. And this, again, taqiyya, for instance, is another thing that is so well founded in Islamic law and Islamic tradition and Islamic history. It's not anything, it's not something that's open to debate. And they say it and they use it. And this is the amazing thing. All this, we have all the facts, all the reality. If we lived in a different age, we would not have to have a hearing, because it's just common sense what's happening. But I think because of all these factors that I've discussed, from the media to academia to this anachronistic worldview that, you know, 200 years ago the Muslim world was subdued and was abandoning Islam and not really attacking, all of these have made it so hard to see reality. And the reality is that it's all coming back now in full force. Just in as much as the Islamic world experiences its resurgence and this whole global Islamic movement, so too will all the aspects that are part and parcel of Islamic history and doctrine come back. Among them, of course, in our case, is Christian persecution, which was it's intrinsic to the Islamic history and doctrine. And now, as Salafists and Muslim Brotherhood and people start trying to reclaim their Islamic identity and throw off things like nationalism, which was more popular a few generations ago, Arab nationalism, and turn their back on the West, all of these ugly aspects of 1,400 years of Islamic imperialism and subjugation are going to come back, and that's what we're seeing now. But like I said, it's the early stages, so hopefully there's still room for maneuver.
Well, thank you. I hope you'll continue to speak out and educate and advocate in the news, with news organizations, in schools, in universities, academic settings, as well as to public policy makers and government. You've been very generous with your time, and I want to thank you for your excellent testimony and your recommendations. This concludes the third and final panel. In conclusion, Egypt is at a crucial crossroads. This is a critical period, and so it would behoove all of us to speak up on this issue, the worsening plight of Egyptian Coptic Christians, which has been the subject of today's hearing. The Commission's received excellent testimony today, and the U.S. should adopt policies, as well as encourage international organizations to adopt policies that will help Egypt move in the right direction as far as democratic principles and human rights principles are concerned, especially for minorities. So with that, we thank you all for your attendance, for your testimony.